share ideas and the concepts and, talk about the problems to be solved. And you do that in a way that feels right.
Today we have Peter Birch, who's the creator of Talking Health Tech. Welcome, Peter.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm amazing. Thanks, Ryan. We're recording on a Friday, so got those Good Friday vibes coming through for this one.
Yeah, I hear you with that for sure. So tell us about your business. You've had the experience of turning your side hustle into a full-time job with a growing team, and you've kind of hit this nice growth curve.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting kind of story. Not to go real deep into it, but I've worked within the healthcare and technology space for the past 15, 20 years, something like that, mostly within the general management operations side of things. I'm neither a doctor or a developer, but I get along nicely with everybody. I went from selling software and building up those teams that are creating solutions in general management gigs for early stage startups and creating some cool tech in the health space, which is this really interesting dynamic of really fast moving, innovative kind of culture, but selling to an industry that's slow, conservative, and kind of risk averse. And that dynamic really interests me. But then, a couple of years ago, started up Talking Health Tech as a podcast just on the side. I thought maybe I might do 10 or 20 episodes because I like podcasts and there's nothing really happening in this space at that time around talking about technology in healthcare, particularly for Australia. It's quite a bit overseas that was available, but trying to put that in context for our local environment, regulation and how to raise money and all that kind of stuff was kind of lacking. And I had a good network. So, hey, spin up a podcast, see how it goes. Went really well. Fast forward to now, it's kind of continued to grow in terms of having more content on the website, but then more organizations wanting to support what we did through sponsorship and other kind of initiatives. And then we started building a community around it. So companies and individuals paying to be part of this community that we're building, where now we've got over 180 people in the community, everywhere from very big organizations who are operating in the healthcare space right down to early medical students or even just students in different areas, not even healthcare, that are interested in this space around how technology and healthcare intersects and how to kind of operate in that. And it's very much a grassroots, getting it done, how to go from, not even A to B, but A point A to A point B, and finding those connections, because it's a remarkably isolating industry if you let it. And sometimes if you're operating in this space, and others could feel the same in their own industry, where it feels like you're the only one doing this and you're the first person to uncover this thing. But there are, as you start to kind of uncover it, there are more people doing similar things, all with a same value and driven to do something meaningful in the space. So we're bringing them together and getting stuff done.
Yeah, I love it. Wow, that's really good. And so, where do you think you bring the most value in the marketplace at the moment?
Look, I think what has been really interesting and something I didn't expect off the back of doing the podcast is that, we did a few listener surveys and asked around and just, speaking with the community. One of the big reasons people listen to the podcast is to learn and to learn what's going on. And not that I didn't really do too much thinking about, what, really what are people going to get out of this podcast when I do it? It's kind of just I think it's going to be interesting and see how it goes. But the consistent feedback is, I love to be aware in what's going on, and I love to learn what's happening in this space. And it's not a bunch of super expert people learning about, who already know about artificial intelligence and machine learning and are building bots and wanting to delve into next level and the Internet of Things and how they're an expert in blah blah. It's people who want to know what that actually is, or why is that relevant to me. And I'm a nurse working in a hospital. I don't want to be overwhelmed with all of this. There's so many different technologies available and so many different concepts and issues and things and resistance and all this kind of stuff. It's so much noise. So how do you put it in context from a day to day? So I think just by taking difficult overwhelming concepts in this emerging space of technology and healthcare and putting in context for those that are within this industry of healthcare and
Mm.
grappling with it, because I come from that space as well, so I know what it's like. So I think that's where a lot of the value comes from, people who check out the show and then join the community.
Yeah, that's great, and I love the fact that you're creating that community as well. And like I guess there's a lot of industry collaboration that has to happen through that whole process and that sort of thing. And how does that industry collab and the community sort of like how does that play out in healthcare and even wider industries, I guess.
Yeah. I think one of the big things that I'm an advocate for is, if you've got a new idea, and whether it's a new product or whether it's like an idea on how to, like with an existing product, but a new way to kind of solve a problem. When I was working in the industry, and I still am, I'm still active in the industry, but when, working in the industry, so often, someone will say, hey, I've got this really good idea for like a new solution, but I'm just keeping it close to my chest at the moment because I'm not going to tell you about it just in case. And it's like, well, just in case what? Like, just in case it's like I can help you with it, like because everyone's so, and it's not me, like any, like by sharing your externalizing your ideas, I think that it then gives it room to breathe, and it allows you the opportunity to start to talk about what it actually is and the value it brings, and importantly, you can learn from others about the value it can bring. And often people are like, oh, I don't want to do that because then they're going to steal my idea and it's a really good one, and this I know is going to be the thing. But the reason it feels so good and important to you is because you're passionate and interested in that space. And the person you're
Mm,
talking to can probably give some really good insights, but they probably really don't care about that space that you're, or they don't care about it as much as you do. And so it takes a lot to kind of make that leap from going, hey, this is a good idea, I should do something with it, to actually executing on it. And quite often, you're the one that's already done 12 months of thinking and percolating over the idea. And so by sharing it, it's not giving you a disadvantage. If anything, it's about like building off other experiences so that you don't make those mistakes and you learn from someone who's one step ahead but maybe in an adjacent vertical or something. So I think that's my ongoing biggest advice around the importance of collaboration within healthcare, but any industry, is by sharing and externalizing kind of these concepts of building in public, or like asking questions as you go. I think it only adds value and it only helps us build better solutions because they're actually solving for problems that exist, as opposed to just something that you personally feel like might be a really good idea.
Yeah, I like that. I definitely know that I went really hard on like IP protection and branding and logos and like protecting ideas and all of that kind of thing. And I definitely could have benefited, like especially in like at the very start of our business, which was a long time ago now. But yeah, it was a lot of wasted effort, a lot of wasted time, and just by collaborating, I could have accelerated those first few years of business with some objective input. That's yeah.
And
So.
yeah, and don't get me wrong, IP protection is super important, and that's something that, funnily enough, just before recording this, I was on the phone to, talking about IP protection. So it's the irony of bringing that up in this one, but there's you do both, and yes, you have your protections in place, but you can still share ideas and the concepts, and talk about the
Mm.
problems to be solved, and you do that in a way that feels right for you. And yes, you should be comfortable in sharing with the people you think that you think can. But there's a lot of value that can be taken from, sometimes just, you see it a lot now, people sharing ideas on Twitter or on LinkedIn, and saying, hey, this seems a problem, and ask a question. And you're not asking the question to try and generate some leads, you're asking the question genuinely because you might not know the answer, or it's something that doesn't quite fit with you, and you get some really good value out of it. So I think that driving with that kind of like solving problems together mentality, and kind of doing it in a way that you're comfortable with, is a good approach, I found.
Mm. Yeah, that's good. And so, what's helped you, build your business? Like, can you give us any insights on some things that have been really effective to help grow your business?
Sure. I think it sounds kind of corny, but when I stopped trying to be other people, it kind of started to flow a bit better. Like, you listen to the
Ah,
first couple of episodes of the podcast, and you look at my Google search history back when I started the podcast, of like, what's the best formula for how many episodes you should do, or like how long should an episode be, and or all those types of things. And I think that once I stopped kind of worrying too much about what the algorithm might think, and focusing on the quality of the content and the people I'm serving and the people who are actually consuming it and what they want, that's where it actually started to go really well. And
Mm.
when I say really well, like really well for me isn't, this kind of hockey stick curve of a thing that then goes up to here. Because another big thing that people talk about, you know, because essentially what we've done, we've taken a podcast and turned it into a full-time business. And like that sounds very clickbaity right there. But at the same time, there's so many other things that go around it. And it doesn't follow this formula where, you need millions of downloads on a podcast before you can monetize it, because that's what Tim Ferriss does. It's like, well, you could have a super niche podcast that serves, or any kind of platform, whether it's a newsletter or a podcast or your thing. If you've got 100 people but they're super passionate about that space and live and breathe it and really resonate with the content you're sharing, and it's going further than just sharing the top 6 ways to do blah, but it's more about, I know this is a problem that we're all facing, this is what my thoughts are, what are your thoughts on it? That's when people start to share it, and then it starts to grow organically and has real value. That's then hard from a competitive perspective. If you're looking at where you position yourself in your space, that's differentiating it, because you've got the runs on the board and you've demonstrated that you understand the market that you're operating in and the problems that are faced, and how to address them. So I found that being you, but also true to the space that you're in, and sometimes the algorithm says to do this, but if you're like the further you niche down into an area and focus on something that you're trying to solve for, usually the better the outcome.
Yeah, I love that. Being authentically you and providing real, genuine value.
Yeah.
So then, Peter, what advice would you give to a business owner or CEO who really wants to get to that next level?
Oh, I think I'm a big believer in getting the foundations right. Sometimes there's so many opportunities that exist out there, and you're like, hey, this would be really cool to spin up something in this space, and you get those great ideas and you message the team. Like, technology is awful for that these days, because you can message everyone on Slack saying, oh, this awesome idea while I was riding my bike, we're going to get into this space now and sell bow ties for dogs. But the having those foundations of understanding like what you're trying to achieve in the first place, and then understanding how it's going, is usually a good way to then look at what to do moving forward. So I found, just by blocking out some time in the calendar on a regular basis to look back at, like, especially when you're building a business yourself from scratch, and at the early stages, getting looking at the P&L and understanding the financials, making sure that there's you got your cash flow and everything going forward. I'm a closet accountant. I'm CPA qualified but don't like to tell people. But the so having the financials there, that gives you the peace of mind, because the amount of anxiety that you have internally about the financials and whether you've got the cash to pay people for the next X blah. So knowing what the right kind of cash runway is for you, so you're like, hey, I got that sorted. Then it's like, okay, so revenue, are we doing that? Is it going in the right direction? Great. So then that way, when you see things have been going well, how do we kind of double down in that area? If we've been through a turbulent 18, 24 months where the things that we thought were really effective in business a couple of years ago are quite different now. So what's working for your business, not necessarily everyone else's, and serving your kind of audience that you're operating in, and then kind of how can we kind of build on that, particularly to scale it out, whether it's to a broader market or whether it's to finding more people in that same market that can benefit from it. So thinking like just getting those foundations right and understanding how the business operates, so you're comfortable in that respect, and then how much room you've got to then experiment and try those zany ideas that might then give you some things, but still having respect for the things that are bringing in that kind of core business for you on a day to day.
Yeah, so having a stable core and then using that as the basis for further expansion, which is
Yeah.
good. Yeah, that's good advice. And finally, Peter, who can you best help? And if they want to get in touch, how can they reach out to you?
Sure thing. So, I guess from a talking health tech side of things, we've got a podcast about the use of technology in healthcare, and anyone can check that out. Just search for Talking Health Tech on your favorite podcast player. You can also go to talkinghealthtech.com and reach out with us there if you've got any questions about what we're doing. We have a membership community for those passionate about the use of technology in healthcare. So if that resonates with everyone, check it out on the website. But also, I'm getting like more and more queries from people about podcasting generally and my own experiences. So feel free to drop me a message on. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, so it's just Peter Birch. Search for me there, and there's stuff I do with Talking Health Tech and other organizations in the healthcare space. Reach out and happy to answer any questions anyone's got about podcasting in general and things that I do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Peter, for coming on the show. Yeah, and just for the value that you've been able to share. There's some definitely some good insights there. Thank you.
Loving what you're doing as well, Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Peter.